All right, we want to talk a bit more about burial rights. Professor Ndela Ntshangase is an analyst on that and also joined from our Durban studios with him, Dr. Gugu Mazibuko, talking about the legacy of the departed king. Dr. Mazibuko, I want to start with you. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. Just looking back just a few moments ago, my colleague Sherwin Bryce-Peace had conducted an interview with the Director of Human Women, Dr. Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka, and she seemed to have flouted the idea of a future queen. Is that even possible within the Zulu culture? I think let's start there.
Good evening. Although I may not say much about the future queen, because that is those are the discussions that usually take place inside the royal palace, and it's the royal family who discuss who the next king would be. So I cannot dwell much on that, because those are the private affairs of the royal family.
And I totally respect that. Yes, please continue.
Yes, but however, talking about the legacy of the late king, there is a lot that he has done for the nation, especially the preservation of cultural heritage, both tangible and intangible heritage. We will also remember him for the peace initiatives, because during the time when he took the throne, the nation was engulfed by many challenges. However, he was able to be a peacemaker without taking any side, even in politics. But he was welcoming everyone in the monarch, and our king, King Goodwill Zwelithini, he was involved in developing the Zulu nation, and he had passion for education, agriculture, and even the health of his people, because he made sure that the young men are circumcised, and the young girls, the red dance is organized for them, so that they can pride themselves as pure and as girls that can abstain and cannot experience a number of challenges that young girls experience today, like early pregnancy, and the HIV and AIDS virus.
Yeah. Prof, perhaps let me bring you in there. I mean, looking at the legacy of the king, what are some of the highlights you think he will be remembered with, and also the impact that he had during his reign?
Good evening. Yes, I'm glad that you are asking that question, because I think that is a very important question. The legacy of the king, if I may just mention some few points, there are many points that one can say. When he came into throne in 3rd December 1971, the situation in South Africa, more so concerning the black people, the apartheid system was at its peak. So you understand, let me not dwell on that one. He himself, he had limited powers, but this is what he had done. He was, and up until his death, the peace initiator person. In other words, he liked peace. Whenever there was a conflict, be it a conflict of words, be it a conflict of ideas which had the potential of leading into a war. He used to go there when he was young himself, just to listen and also try and resolve that. And the other thing is, of course, whenever let me come closer now to the era where perhaps most of us may remember.
Yes.
South Africa, just before the liberation, which occurred in 1994, South Africa was engulfed by a violent situation. And he shouted at the top of his voice, saying that people stop fighting. The fight was mainly between the ANC followers and the IFP followers, but he did not take any side. He will shout and sometimes even stamp a table with the back of his hand, saying that you people of my father, meaning my people, stop fighting. I'm not siding with any one of you, but stop fighting. That's him. He's a man of peace, and I think those examples, there are more, but those are just enough. He will be remembered again by reviving the traditional ceremonies, in which those ceremonies, they were there before him, but when he came into throne, they were no longer practiced. Here I can count the much loved one and the much famous one, the so-called reed dance, which he revived the same ceremony in 1984, and followed by the others. I'm just going to mention three.
Yes.
The other ceremony that he revived was the Ukubutwa Kwezinsizwa, which I believe is the only one thus far in Africa who is still doing that. That is the appointment of a regiment, where the young men will be told that they must not abuse their strength and so forth against women or innocent people or even children. And that is the ceremony where, having been taught, then they will go into a kraal with a black bull and be expected to kill such an animal in the blink of an eye, and with their hands. And that is still another thing that we'll be remembering him with.
Yes.
And in addition, in conclusion, perhaps I'm just going to mention two now. He is the person who, in his heart, he fought this pandemic called AIDS and the AIDS pandemic that I'm talking about. And then he will call this within Umhlanga and educate the young ones, telling them that they must not engage themselves into sexual activities whilst young and not end up there. He is known to have revived as well the circumcision of boys for various reasons. And above all, he is the figure that has been well known throughout the world. And this has been seen now when he is dead, as many people have been surprised that the messages of condolences are coming all over the globe. That's the king, in brief, his legacy. There are more one could say, but I don't want to be that long because of the limited time.
Absolutely. And perhaps, Doctor, I can bring you in there. Not just that, the departed king was obviously concerned about some of, the other issues plaguing South Africa, issues of gender-based violence. And I guess whosoever then, I've had this conversation with our previous guests, whosoever then does take over the reins would need to deal with some of the pressing issues that South Africa is facing. The preservation of the Zulu culture is equally important, but the challenges facing the nation as a whole is also something that the departed king was very concerned about.
Yes, the king. My colleague mentioned the ceremonies that the king revived. One of the most important is a ceremony that the king revived is the Umkhosi Wesivivane, which is a ceremony for women, where women are educated on many issues, including gender-based violence, including their rights, including how to deal with family issues. I think it's very important to note that women and children were also at the heart of the king.
Absolutely. So you indicated much earlier on in the interview, of course, that issues pertaining to succession are things that will be discussed by the royal family themselves. But how soon are we expected to hear, because obviously I think in the beginning you would recall that the Prime Minister had indicated the reason why they had announced the departing of the King was because they did not want to leave a vacuum. So I guess that will be top of mind as well once, I guess, these particular ceremonies are out of the way. The succession would be an issue. How soon are we likely to hear of a successor in this regard?
Let's be patient. Let us wait for the royal family to sit down. And we must also remember that this is the mourning period.
Yes.
So we must give them time to finalize the discussions amongst themselves, and then they announce to the nation. We need to be patient and respect that these issues are dealt with, and these are dealt with in a special way, and they are sensitive issues that we need to respect the space that the royal family occupy.
Professor, perhaps I can also bring you in there on the issues of, the respect for Zulu culture and the richness thereof. The departed king had always, and that was a sentiment shared by many of those who were very close to him, in that he made sure that at all times peace reigned, at all times the richness of the Zulu culture was preserved. So I guess then, while we cannot speak about succession at this particular time, whosoever then does take over the reins would need to do much more than that.
Yes, you are right. Let me rather come in this way. There are some of the people who are worried that whatever the preservation of culture that you are talking about, that he revived under difficult circumstances, perhaps now are going to start to diminish when the new succession person take the thrones. I don't think so. I don't think so at all. You see, when he revived the culture that we are talking about, it became a uniting force to the Zulu nation on its own. Not only to the Zulu nation on its own, even some other nations. In the history that you opened up with, the person who was talking there did mention that culture is a uniting force. He spoke of the Basotho and so forth. A similar thing here. I don't think that it's going to diminish. It's going to remain, instead of diminishing, it's going to grow. Because he himself, when he was doing this, people saw that culture, what it does to them, it tells them their identity, and it also gives them the sense of belonging, to know who one is, and then where one belongs, and so forth, and becomes proud of himself and or herself, and so forth. So I don't think it's going to diminish, because even the younger ones, he did not exclude them in these ceremonies that we are talking about. They were also there, the youth, and you have seen this on your own if you were watching the television, that even now, at the where they are now, Wakatomtanda, there are young girls there as well. They have not been excluded. Young boys as well have not been excluded, and they are learning a lot and lot. And above all, there are still other elderly people who understand this, that he was working with. So I don't think it will diminish, but it will grow rather than diminish.
Professor Ndela Ntshangase, thank you very much indeed for joining us on the program this evening, joined by Dr. Gugu Mazibuko, also talking about the legacy of the departed king. To you both, thank you very much for joining us here on the SABC.